So if you caught part one of this series of me buying my competition orange 2004 Mustang SVT Cobra Terminator, you'll know that I brought the car home from Phoenix, and I was very lucky to find one of these competition orange Cobras. They are very few and far between, and most of them were very far away. They're difficult to get. They're difficult to bring out here to Utah. And so I was very excited to find this one and buy it and bring it home. It was a nice desert drive all the way home, and I had stopped to get gas a couple times and took the drive down there with my cousin in his black Bullet and brought the car home. On the way home, the car rolled 30,000 miles, so very nice low mile Cobra, nicer and lower mileage than anything I had ever expected to have. So I had the cars home, and these pictures are kind of cool because you see the Cobra sitting there with no rear spoiler, and it still had the Arizona plate that reads '04 Cobra on it. I still have that plate today. Speaking of that license plate, I saw a black '03 Cobra 10th anniversary come up for sale, and I was looking at it and I thought the garage looked a little familiar, and as I looked closer I noticed that it was owned by the guy who sold me my orange Cobra, and this was years later. But I looked on the back of the car, noticed it had the same '04 Cobra license plate on it. And some people in the comments said, that's not an '04, that's an '03 10th anniversary. And he mentioned something about how he got that vanity plate years ago, and he didn't mention anything about the competition orange Cobra, but it seems like he had kept that plate and he had it on the 10th anniversary car. And so back to my Cobra, I got it in the garage and I started to take things off of the car that I didn't like. One of them was this window sticker on the back that said SVT OA. That's a Special Vehicle Team Owners Association. And so to me, this showed that the car was cared for. The original owner had joined the SVTOA club, and my good friend Tyler loves stuff from there. So I didn't really see it as anything special, and I didn't want that on the car. And you could see it was kind of deteriorating from the Phoenix sun on there. So I scraped that off, and it came off in pieces anyway. And so I did take it off, and I did try to save it, but it was pretty destroyed by the time I got it off. Side mirrors had these little bubble mirror things on the ends so you can see a little farther in your blind spots, and I didn't like those either. I thought they were ugly, so I very carefully removed those as well. And in some of the pictures of the car you could see it had this little sticker on the windows, and I saved the sticker. I still have it. I just took this picture of it so that we could look at it for a second, and it's just a security alarm system. The car doesn't have an alarm, so I was wondering if that was just something that was put on the car to maybe deter people from trying to steal it or something. Maybe they'd go up and see that and think that it had an alarm, but to my knowledge there's no alarm, there's no wires under the dash, there's nothing of that type. So I've looked around and I never saw anything that would show that I had an alarm system. Sometimes there's like this little megaphone thing by the driver's side valve cover, and it's kind of weird to see sometimes. You don't know what it is, and it's actually a speaker for an alarm system, and the car doesn't have anything like that in it, so I don't believe the car ever had an alarm on it. Another thing I took off the car was a little Stita badge that was underneath the SVT emblem on the left side of the trunk lid by that left side tail light. And if you look, the badge that says SVT is a little high. It should be lined up with the Ford badge on the other side. And then there's a Stita badge on the bottom there. So I believe that emblem had been removed, and then they put the Stita one there too. And I think this trunk lid had to have some paint work done, because where that third brake light is, along the top rim of the trunk lid there should be drill holes for the Terminator's original spoiler, and they weren't there. I did check the build report, and the car did come, it said with rear spoiler wing on there. So I believe a body shop had filled the holes where the spoiler was and painted them, and then they drilled the new holes on top of the trunk lid for the Cobra R spoiler that I talked about in my first video. But anyway, The badge was a little higher on the left, and there was a Steeda badge. It was just a sticky one and just peeled right off. And so I took that off. I put it on my toolbox. And the only thing Steeda I ever found on the car were the front floor mats. So maybe he got new floor mats and it came with a sticker or whatever, and he put it on the trunk lid. So basically, I was just removing anything that the first owner had put on the car like that. So one of the first things I had to do was take the car in to get inspected here in town, where it could pass a inspection for coming from out of state, as well as a safety inspection. And those inspections used to be something we had to do every year for the safety. Every time you register the car, you used to have to get a safety inspection. Now, luckily, they've done away with that. They actually admitted it was a waste of money and time because you had to take it to a shop to have them do the inspection, and it cost like $80 or something. And it was really good that they got away with getting rid of that tax or that required inspection. But basically, what I had to do was first of all, I had to have a police officer sign the car off to show that it was not stolen, and there was a form for the DMV for that. But then for the safety inspection, you had to take it in, and they had to make sure the blinkers worked, make sure the headlights worked, make sure your windshield wipers were good. It would have to spray your windshield with the wiper fluid, which was really annoying because if the car was all clean, then they would do that and it sprays the windshield, gets the roof wet. You have to like clean it all off, you know. I never really used windshield wiper fluid on any of these cars, just the daily driver ones I have. And so that was kind of annoying to have to go in and do that. And some shops were super anal about it, and they would actually take off your wheel and check your brakes and see how thick your brake pads were. They'd check your tires to make sure that you had plenty of tread on the tires. Basically, stuff that you should be doing yourself. They were paid to do that, and it was really annoying. And the worst part about it was they would drive your car into their bay to inspect it. And I hated letting people drive my cars when it came to that time of the year, even though it was just through the parking lot. But just think about it. How many people these days drive stick shift? Hardly anybody does. So you get to watch them struggle to pull your car in. So I had actually just done the inspection on my blue Mach 1 at this shop, and I said, I have another car I need to do. I'll be right back. So I went home, I grabbed the orange Cobra, and I pulled it there, and I drove it into the shop and parked it there. And they shouted at me and told me, you're not allowed to drive in here, and blah, blah, blah. And I understand there's rules and stuff, but I just told them this car is very special, and it has, you know, performance clutch, even though it was a stock clutch. I told them, I don't want you guys driving it. I don't want someone stalling it or messing it up. And you could see underneath the car, there was like a bay, like a underground thing where they could walk under and inspect it. So I didn't want them like hitting the wheel on that, on the rim of it, or possibly driving it and off, having one of the wheels fall down into there and stuff. So I went ahead and had them do that, and it was just really annoying. Now, they did come and put a plastic cover over the seat, so that was nice of them to do that. And, you know, it's just one of those things that I hated doing. And I'm glad they don't do that anymore, because it was just annoying to have to find a shop, and if you have window tint that's too dark, then they'll fail it, and if it fails the inspection, then you have to go through all this trouble and stuff. And so that was kind of an annoying thing. But there you see the picture of my orange Cobra sitting in the shop with the Y2K Cobra R wheels on it, and you know, this is just right when I got the car, so it was kind of a interesting picture. Now, in the later years, before they ended the inspections, those mandatory safety inspections, I did end up taking my cars to a Shell service station that my friend's dad owned, and my friend worked there. And we weren't very close friends, but he had a really nice black modified 300ZX twin turbo. He understood cars. He worked in the shop all the time. So it was nice to be able to take my car there, and I would just pull it onto the side of the shop, and he would just come out and look at it and say, is there anything wrong with it? I say no, and he'd sign it off, you know. And he'd have me run the blinkers and stuff, but that was very nice of him to do that with all my cars. Now, as I'm looking at this picture, I look over and I think I see a zinc yellow Mustang GT over there. Not sure if it's a V6 or GT, but it might have been my neighbor's yellow GT that I've talked about on the channel. The car was actually a car that lived across the street from me. It was zinc yellow, and a young girl had it, and she let the parking brake off, and it rolled back and hit somebody and broke the tail light and bashed up the bumper, and they popped it out, and I gave them an old tail light I had for my Bullet. But the car appeared recently kind of spray painted black, but you can still see the yellow there. So it's kind of cool to see that. I'm like, I think that's that GT. Just on a side note, as we do this story here, that would have been there about that same time. The Cobra looked really good, but I still wanted to clean it up a little bit. And working with my friend in mobile detailing, he taught me to use microfiber towels. You should never be washing a car with towels or old t-shirts or something like that. And it's a little investment to get some nice microfiber towels and get going with it, but that's totally worth it. You really don't want to be introducing any swirl marks on the paint. And I use some clay bar, and that helps decontaminate any brake dust or debris or road grime or dirt or anything from just weather conditions, just the elements that get stuck in the clear coat. And so it's a very nice way to very smooth and carefully remove contaminants from the paintwork, from the clear coat. And so I've never paint corrected the car. I do have a random orbital buffer and some Chemical Guys products, but I have never used them on this Cobra. It's very clean. I wanted to keep as much as the original clear coat on this car, but I did have a little bit of compound, and I actually forgot I had even done this, but I think I did use the buffer on it a little bit and cleaned up the paint a little bit. I did that with the Bullet. It really needed it when I got it. But the car looks fantastic. I was just looking at it in the garage tonight, and I was thinking, wow, this car doesn't look like it's ever had any paint correction or anything done, and it looks fantastic. So I guess I might have had a little compound on there at one point. But the next thing I wanted to do was take out the headlights and take off the plastic cover that goes over the radiator shroud, all that area, and just clean all the dirt out of there. It's just dusty from being in Arizona, and no rust, so that's the best part about it. It just looked really good when it was finished, and the paint work was beautiful underneath. Any Mustang can benefit from cleaning it up like this, and you can go very far as to take off bumpers and clean everything you can get to, but there's always going to be a little something under there. But this definitely looked a lot better, a lot cleaner. I took out the tail lights and made sure to clean behind the tail lights. I like that whole housing area to be nice and clean, and obviously it looked beautiful. I cleaned inside where the filler gas cap was and got the plastic in there all looking good. The keyhole had a little bit of gunk in there, and so I cleaned that out and made that look really nice on the trunk there. But you can see how nice this car shines. Absolutely beautiful. The paint was great. 30,000 mile Cobra. And this was a very nice, relaxing thing to do. It was fun to clean up a car that was already so nice. It's not so fun to try to bring back a car that's really damaged on the paintwork, like the Bullet was, and the Bullet had the crow's feet or the cracking in the clear coat, and so there's nothing you can do about that. And so it's kind of depressing when you try really hard but the car doesn't look as good as you want it to. Before I had the hood scoop on the Bullet repainted, the clear coat was really bad on it. It was all fogged up, and so there's really nothing you can do to fix that. So it's not as fun working on that. I mean, you can bring it back a little and make it look better, but in this case, it was a very nice car and it cleaned up very nicely. So it was fun to do because I'm just in there listening to music and enjoying being with my car. And the more you work on a car, the more you love it. If it's a car you just buy and put in the garage and you never see it, then you probably won't love it as much as a car that you spend some time with and have those fun late night hours listening to music and polishing it up and cleaning it and wrenching on it. So everything was very clean and very original on this car. You can see the stock fuel injectors, the stock pulley, everything looked great. The hoses were good. I had seen some where, the hoses were cut up and they did like a head cooling mod and cut the original hoses and stuff. And like it's all in good reason, but I just like seeing the stock engine bay. And you might not know what a head cooling mod is. You see this hose here, how it has one that tees into the back side of it where the hose clamp is, and it goes back to the back of the engine, and that basically joins the two cylinder heads with coolant, where on the driver's side it deadheads, the passenger side it has the heater core, and so it makes it so that the heads have better coolant flowing through them. So one of the things about the Cobras that a lot of people like is looking at the supercharger belt. And so here you can see the stock pulley. It's really big. You see the stock supercharger belt sitting there. And people take off the metal shroud, the pulley cover, that would go over that because they like the look of it better. So this one did not have the pulley shroud in it. This is what a good pulley shroud should look like. This is an OEM one off another Cobra. I bought this from somebody else who obviously didn't need it anymore. And a lot of people remove these because they like to see the supercharger pulley and everything, but also because they don't fit as well when you put a snub idler pulley next to the supercharger pulley for better belt wrap. So these are one of the first things that come off these Cobras and get thrown away. So this picture is of the other orange Cobra that I had shown in my other video, one of the previous ones I looked at for sale that was pulleyed. And so when you hear of a pulleyed Cobra, what that means is that middle pulley there that's on the top in the center of the screen that says billet flow 2.760 on it. That's a 276 upper is what people would call that. And so if you replace that stock supercharger pulley with a smaller one, it'll spin the blower faster and make more boost. You can also put a larger pulley down below on the crank, and that will spin the blower faster as well. So it's kind of like gearing, and some people relate it to like a bike when you change gears and you have to pedal with a bigger gear or a smaller gear, and how much faster it spins the engine. And so that was just kind of a picture I was wanting to show here of another Cobra that was pulleyed. And you can see that big idler pulley next to it is it has a bracket that bolts in, and it puts that extra pulley there because that pulley does not exist from the factory, and that makes it so the belt has a lot more tension on it right around that supercharger pulley. You can see how that pulley is pushing it and making sure that it's tight around the supercharger pulley there. And the reason you want one of those snub idler pulleys to keep belt wrap on the supercharger pulley is because if it spins too fast and the belt's not tight around it, then you get what's called belt slip. And most belt slip occurs at the high RPM range. And so if that pulley is spinning but the belt's slipping on it, and it's not going to spin it as much as you want, and you're going to lose boost and power at top end. And so now obviously you can see that that shroud is not going to fit there anymore if that snub idler pulley is there. Now my red Cobra, it still had the pulley cover on it, and the guy had cut the side of the bracket to make it fit to look like there wasn't a snub idler there. This is what you would call a day 2 mod, which means the first day you buy the car, the second day you go into the garage and you start taking things off or modifying it. And so a lot of people took these pulley covers off just like the first owner of this car must have done, because they wanted to see the supercharger belt better. And so I've seen pictures of stacks of these where performance shops that worked on Cobras and pulleyed them and tuned them would have a bunch of these laying around that they'd take off customers' cars and just stack them up around the shop. And I think this is one of those things that might be worth a little bit of money one day. I've seen people sell these things, or try to, for a couple $100s. I paid $10 for this one. Somebody didn't need it anymore. It was a very nice, clean one. And they were very nice to say, hey, if you want it, I'll send it to you. Just pay shipping, and $10 is fine. So it's a very nice one. Now these pulley covers do get rusted pretty easily. I've seen a lot of them that are all rusted and crusty looking. So this one is in great shape. It came from California, so beautiful pulley cover there. And I just thought I'd probably rather just put that back on the car for now. I think it would look pretty good, and the big pulley on the supercharger wasn't that attractive to look at like the smaller pulleys do. So if you have an eye for it, you can see the different kinds of smaller pulleys and snub idler pulleys that other companies offer, and some of them look better than others. This is like the one that was on my Red Cobra. It was the JDM brand. And there's the billet flow one again. I think that's the best looking one. I have that on my Bullet too, because my Bullet has a supercharger from an 03 Cobra. But in this case, I'm really happy that my car had the stock pulley, stock tune. I just know that the car hadn't been, over boosted or, run lean or whatever, because it was all factory. And so that's something that I was actually looking for. I wanted a Cobra that was pretty much stock. Now you can see what it looks like with the stock pulley shroud on there and everything. It looks good. It looks like the advertisements I saw for the Cobra when it was new. I think that's kind of cool. So I did think it'd be fun to play around a little bit with the Cobra, like modding it a little bit with a couple things in the engine bay that I thought would look good. So it already had this big silver intake, so I thought I'll just buy a Cobra badge and put it on there, and it looked really good. Now that intake now resides on my Bullet Mustang, because the Torque Tech kit it has uses a 03 Cobra supercharger and intake and everything on it, and so that's all on my Bullet now, and I put a stock intake back on this Cobra. And so I took that snake off, obviously, when I put this setup on the Bullet. But, it looked good for the time. It was fun, just kind of under the hood dress up. So it wasn't really serious. I could always take it off if I wanted to, but I thought it looked good. And so as I continued cleaning under the engine bay, I saw that it had the sticker on it for the Mac intake, and, it had this K&N one as well. And so I just took those off because I just didn't like them. I thought they were kind of cheesy. I think those are things that should go on like your toolbox or your sticker bombing the refrigerator in the garage or something, but not on the car. So I just took those off. I thought it'd be fun to get an SVT Performance keychain that they were selling on the website. That was the forum I was on mostly for the Cobras, and that's where I bought the car technically. And it's a fun place to see Cobras for sale all the time. So I thought that was just kind of fun to do. I put that on the key ring of my Cobra. As far as the interior goes, there was a B&M sticker on the shifter bezel. I took that off, and the car had Steeda floor mats in it, and I have those. I put them in my yellow Mach 1 right now, and I put some OEM nice clean low mileage floor mats back in the car. So here's the car, no rear spoiler, but in the driveway looking good. At this time I had these 3 Mustangs, and I was very excited about them. You can see the Cobra R wheels peeking there, and it was just fun to have the orange Cobra and the blue Mach 1 and the blue Bullet. They were just very special cars to me. Those front wheels, like I mentioned, the tires were too narrow for them, so they were stretched on the rim. You can kind of see it in this picture a little bit better, but I really didn't like that, and so I wanted to put those wheels for sale and sell them. And I mentioned that the wheels had a tire that wasn't quite wide enough on there. I was very transparent about that. So I was super thrilled to have my competition orange Cobra, although I was a little anxious to get those wheels off and put stock ones on and get the spoiler on it, and then it would be perfect. I did put the shorty antenna on the car. It's like a day 2 mod, and I still have the original antenna, so no harm done there. And so the Cobra sat in the garage a lot, and I drove it on nice days, and I was getting ready to make the other changes to it, and there's some more things that you'll see that I did to it coming up in future videos here. But I did want to talk a lot about my True Blue 01 Mustang Bullet, just to mention that the reason why my orange Cobra was able to stay stock is because I continued to build up this car. It had a built engine, heads, cams, everything done to it, and it was a fun car to go race, and I enjoyed racing a lot down at the drag strip in Las Vegas. And so I ended up continuing to go ahead and supercharge this Bullet as time went on. And if you remember in the first story of my orange Cobra, I mentioned that I was about to get a supercharger for my Bullet, but I decided to put the money towards buying a Terminator Cobra. So luckily things continued to work out for me with that. I mentioned I bought another GT that had a supercharger on it already, and I put that on the Bullet. And but the cool thing was, this Bullet was really fast. I actually even raced it against my orange Cobra when I had the supercharger on it, and it walked away from the orange Cobra. The Cobra did hang for a few seconds next to it, but then the Bullet was out of there, And so it's because of this bullet that I was able to keep the orange Cobra stock, because I had a fun supercharged V8 Mustang to do all the racing with and daily drive and everything. And the Cobra was able to continue down the path of being a collector car, low mileage garage queen that I would take out as my weekend warrior, show car, awesome Terminator, low mileage, awesome fun Mustang to show off and stuff. But a little story about that real quick was I went down to Voodoo Racing in Vegas to look at the Cobras. The shop had been building these Terminators since they were new, and the black one up on the lift was one of the fastest Terminators ever, and right now it's a huge total cage car now. It runs in, I believe, the sevens or sixes. It's just super fast, but you could go to Voodoo on any given day and there would be some Terminators and they're being worked on, and there'd be a bunch of them out in the parking lot. And this is a time that has changed. Now there's Coyotes everywhere and Dodge cars and LS cars being worked on, and they do a lot of everything, but the Terminators were the bread and butter of that business at the time. And so my brother and I would be in Vegas, we'd go to the racetrack and have fun, and then we'd say, hey, let's go over and see if there's any Cobras to look at over at Voodoo. We'd see them at the track, and we would see like the silver Voodoo car. One of the customers had broken an axle at the track, and we got under there and tried to help them fix it in time and stuff for the next race. And but anyway, we would be at Voodoo, and we were looking at this red 10th anniversary Cobra. I have a story about this car on my channel. And the owner, Frank, came out and he asked us what we were doing, because of course we were just two guys looking at cars in the parking lot. And he was being protective of his customers' cars, which is what he should be doing. And he asked us what we were up to, and we just said we love 0304 Cobras. And we saw that Black Betty was in the magazine. It was either 50 magazine or Muscle Mustangs and Fast Forward. Can't remember which one it was. But it had made the cover, and it had an article in there about being the fastest Terminator at the time. And so we explained to him that we knew who he was and we enjoyed these cars. And he told us, okay, well, some people come by and then they scope out what's in the parking lot, and we're worried that sometimes they want to steal parts off cars, and these cars have some valuable parts on them and things. And we totally understood that. But after talking with us for about a minute, he realized we were really just enthusiasts who cared about the cars. And we continued to tell him about our cars. And my brother said, I have a screaming yellow Cobra with a Whipple, and my brother here has a competition orange. And he said, oh, really? Competition orange? That's a pretty rare color. I said, yeah, it is. And he said, what's done to it? I said, oh, it just has an exhaust on it and a short shifter. And he said, it's not pulleyed? And I said, no. He said, so it's not tuned, it's not pulleyed, it still has the cage on the lower crank pulley? I said, yeah, it's all stock, everything on it. And he said, keep it that way. Which, that's kind of funny that you would think somebody would say that coming from the guy who has the world's fastest Terminator. I mean, this guy is in the business of taking these cars and modifying them and making them go fast, and we've seen his work. We've seen so many other Voodoo cars and Cobras that would put the Voodoo sticker across the top of the windshield there, and they were kind of a thing. They were known for being the fast ones. So I thought it was kind of interesting. He told me if it survived this long, and that was 10 years ago, then you should probably just leave it the way it is and just don't touch it. It's a virgin Cobra, is what he told me. And so this helped me continue to steer this Cobra's future down the path of being a stock survivor car. And there's a few of them that I know of. There's another one in Las Vegas that had 8,800 miles on it, and he has everything that goes with the car, just so much stuff. And he was saying that he'd like to sell it for $85,000. And that is a very low mileage example, and it's very perfect. He has all the parts to put it back the way it should look, because this is one of the more recent pictures, but he has the CCW wheels and stuff on it. And so even though I was in Vegas often for racing and stuff, I never saw this car in person, but my twin brother did see the car, and he went and looked it over, and the owner of this car actually sold us the Mechman alternators for our Cobras. I don't know if he's like a dealer or whatever, but anyway, that's kind of the story of how my brother went over to his house and he saw the Cobra and said, yeah, that's really nice. It's like all original, low mileage. And my brother had told me, why don't you try to sell your car and buy that one because it's so perfect, and then you can just keep it as one of the most original low mileage stock cars out there, even though, I mean, it doesn't look very stock in this picture, but it has all the other parts. And I thought that would be kind of cool. And I thought about, and that was before he was asking 85 for it. That was a long time ago. And I just thought, well, it's the same car I have now, and it's so much money difference. I might as well just keep the one I have. Mine's a beautiful example of a survivor car as well. But of course, here's like a really nice one. And another one that was very beautiful was this 12,000 mile competition orange my friend Tyler owned for a little while. And that car was beautiful, and it was so well preserved. I did a story about this on my channel. I show how the guy he bought it from had all the documentation. It was very particular with this car, and it was just all original. It was beautiful. And the point I'm making here is this car used to look like this, but then when Tyler sold it, the guy who bought it from him took it to a shop and had a Whipple supercharger put on and a bunch of things done to it. So it's kind of sad to see one that was so preserved, so low mileage, and so perfect turned into just kind of a normal run-of-the-mill Cobra at this point with all the mods and stuff done to it. Because I think we're getting to a point now where you're starting to find the value of these go up extremely high, and the ones that are preserved and stock and original are the ones that are fun to look at. And that's kind of how I look at my car. It's fun to open the hood and look and see the stock blue injectors and see the pulley shroud on it, and all the stuff that makes it kind of original. And I know my car isn't 100% stock. I like the sound of the exhaust, and I'm glad I have the Borla exhaust on it, so when I go drive it, it's enjoyable. I'll get to that in a little bit here, actually. I have that coming up in a future story, and that will be out soon. But at this point, looking at the Voodoo Cobras and stuff, and I was thinking, I think I want to just keep it original. My intentions for my Cobra when I bought it was, hey, I'm getting this Cobra, I can barely afford it, and I want to do everything with it just like my brothers. I want to have a big supercharger on it, a blower upgrade, and I want this to be my awesome Terminator. Now later, I bought a 10th anniversary red Cobra and did all that with it so that I could keep my orange one stock. And like I said already in the video, I had my Bullet to go race and have fun on it. It has a ported Eaton, it screams, it's pulleyed, so it makes all those awesome noises, and it's like having a pulleyed Cobra. So I got everything I wanted, and in this case I could keep my orange Cobra stock. But that would evolve over the years of getting all those things I wanted. But at this point, I was happy to just keep my orange Cobra stock and enjoy it the way it was. I really enjoy watching videos about, barn finds, or, these certain kinds of videos where people go and authenticate cars. And they're not always Mustangs, but I love when they go and look at it and they say, okay, here's a 69 RS Camaro Z28, and if we open up the back trunk, we can look, there's 2 bars in the trunk for the trunk to open, like the hinge system, and the 2 bars are the same size. So that means that this car originally did not come with a rear spoiler, because it would have had 1 bigger bar on there. And so it's like that kind of stuff really excites me, and I really enjoy that. So I love looking at my cars and saying, okay, this is original competition orange, it has this and this. I can tell it was modified here, or it wasn't modified there, so I just really like that. It's hard to put that into words, but I do enjoy watching other YouTube videos, and I do enjoy seeing that with other cars and seeing the originality and seeing where there should be drill holes for something special and unique to the car from the factory and stuff like that. So in my last video, I did mention about how a lot of people can't leave an orange car alone. They have to put stripes on it and stuff. And I did come across this picture after I'd found it later, and this was a conversation I had with my friend Tyler about, finding an orange Cobra that was, relatively low mileage for sale, that somebody's just enjoyed for a while, and that they put stripes on it, and that's not a very good decision in our opinions, but it was interesting to see somebody do that. And of course it's orange, and so it's special, and now probably needs to be repainted to take care of that, because the stripes are never going to come off right, or they're probably painted on and stuff. But that was just something I wanted to include here because I had already talked about that earlier, and then I found these other pictures as I was editing this video. So just something I wanted to share. But I also don't want to be rude for anybody who enjoys putting stripes or things on their cars. That's totally their opinion, and it's their car, and it's their right to do whatever they want, and they can do whatever they think looks best on their car. So I have my opinion, and I'm very strong with that opinion, but I also want to say that if somebody thinks that their car looks better with stripes, then that's their business, and I don't want to be rude or hurt anybody's feelings, and so I just want to make that very clear. But I see a car like this and I think, oh, that car could have been so nice if you just would have left the stripes off it. It would have been original paint and everything. And so as we end this video, we'll remember what my orange Cobra looks like at this point in time. It had the Y2K Cobra R wheels on it and no rear spoiler. That's stuff that I'm going to be changing, and I'll show you that in the videos to come. It's really interesting to be at this point in the history of the car and still see it like that, because I don't know the car as this anymore. Like, I've known it for the last 10 years as what it looks like now, which is basically a stock Cobra. So we'll get to that in the next video. So I hope you enjoy the series. I hope you subscribe and stay tuned for the stories to come, and there'll be more parts to this story. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and stay tuned for more Mustang content and more of the story of this Competition Orange 04 Cobra.